we were there in the very, very beginning of this whole thing.
It takes a gifting of understanding how orchestrations work. My goal is to help people become the best they can possibly be.
Oh, I thought you said plug-in. I swear I thought you said a plug-in.
One more than the other.
And I'll say, hi, I'm artificial. And you'll say, hi, I'm real. That won't be cheesy at all.
That's cute.
How cute is that? Hey, welcome to our podcast, Behind the Board. And this podcast is about all things audio production, music, everything from miking techniques to outboard gear to virtual VSTs, use of AI in the process. And I've got my best friend of 40-some years here, Rob Pottorof.
40 years.
Yeah. And a little bit about ourselves. Let me introduce you, and then you can introduce me.
Cool.
Rob's had quite a storied career of being a composer and an Emmy-nominated composer, in fact. But his specialty is actually virtual composition. Although he's worked with many orchestras and live players, he's made a great living at producing music, orchestral music specifically, because that's kind of he's really good at it, utilizing VSTs, plugins, and he's brilliant as far as putting all that stuff together. So,
and I wash windows too. So,
yeah, he washes great windows. But anyway, so that's Rob.
And Jim Parroco, once again, is my best friend of 40 years.
Yeah.
And Jim and I met way back when. We were both performing in a theme park, and that was the start of our relationship. And then his family moved to Virginia, and my family's in Kentucky, but we both decided that at this stage of our lives, we were going to go out with our hair on fire at Mach 10.
Exactly.
And so that's what we're doing right now.
And teach the world what we don't know.
Yeah. And I have to say, Jim is probably one of the most talented engineer, producers, mastering engineers that I've ever met. Although I've never met any others, so it really doesn't. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I've learned more from him. He's forgotten more about engineering and mastering than I will ever learn. But I've learned more from him in the past, years than anybody. It's been a great education, aside from being my best friend in the world. So there you go.
So today we're going to talk about the segment's called Artificial, A-R-T, official, to real.
And I'm arty, and that's real.
And I'm real. So I have a passion for real microphones, real boards, real outboard gear,
real musicians,
real singers,
real
players. And I'm very much a geek when it comes to trying to get the best sonic quality from that. But there's a lot of things to discuss with that and the applications for that. And Rob is...
And my specialty, as Jim stated, was, being in the virtual world, and whether it's VST, orchestral VSTs, or even now AI voices. And when I say AI voices, there is a line of distinction there between just putting in prompts and getting something out and actually using AI voices like Dreamtronics is what I love, and being able to actually create your vocal tracks and then, use the different voices to create what you're trying to get after. And we'll get into... We're not trying to take jobs away from people, but how you can utilize this to enhance what you're doing, and also when you don't have the budgets to bring in 8 singers.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
It always comes down to money.
It sure does.
I mean, how you develop your productions all comes down to money.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, but to make a living in this industry, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's a reality.
When we started back in the 1980s, we worked in a recording studio, and it was a 2-inch Sony studio.
It was a 16-track 2-inch.
16-track 2-inch. Yeah. That's true, with an Allen Heath board and a Roland automated mixing console. And back in the days when he bought a 106, Juno 106, and we thought it was the greatest thing in the world, and all of a sudden it was the worst thing in the world, trying to get rid of him. Now everybody thinks it's the greatest thing in the world again.
I know. I wish
So,
I'd have kept it. I could have made a fortune off of
yeah,
it.
I know. The roads that I was trying to get rid of in my parents' garage would be willing to take $50 for it. I think probably ended up giving somebody $50 to take it away.
Well, put it this way: when I started with the MIDI stuff, I mean, I still have a keyboard magazine from when I got it during that time. The title was "What is this thing called MIDI?" And I remember a buddy of mine had a DX7. I had a Juno 106, and I read the magazine, and it was talking about being able to hook two keyboards up. And so I ran down to the local music store. We were in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I bought a 3-meter MIDI cable. I think, and this was in the 80s. I think it was like $40-some at the time. And I brought it back, and I remember we were in an apartment. We plugged the DX7 into the Juno 106, and I was playing the DX7 sounds off of my Juno 106, and I just thought this was the coolest thing in the world.
It's still cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So-
It is. So the point is that we were there in the very, very beginning of this whole thing.
Yeah, I remember when you started doing what I called the one-man band productions. I mean, you would come in with your drum machine and start producing stuff and producing beats and then music and everything else. While you were doing that, I was recording Bootsy Collins.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so we kind of came at it from two different angles, and sort of kind of merged. We've done 3 albums together now,
Yeah.
independent artist albums, and Rob brings in that element, and I bring in the recording side, and it's been really fun to work with it. But let's talk about now. I mean, what the audience probably wants to hear is how do you, and this is a big one. It's a wild, wild west right now with AI.
Yeah,
okay.
sure
I mean,
is.
let's just get right to it. Okay.
With the white elephant in the room.
Yeah, the white elephant, AI, and kind of each of our opinions would be good. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think let me say I'm coming from the purist side of the musician side, and I see a lot of musicians just really balking on it and just really upset about it, actually. And when Congress, I think last week, passed that you can't copyright the
yeah.
music
Yeah.
on the AI, you can copyright the prompts
Right.
and the lyrics. But the problem is, if somebody produces music on AI or takes a Suno stems and builds it together, somebody likes that song, they can easily take that song in the sequence it's in, whether it's verse, chorus, verse, or just a bridge, and use it for their own material, re-record it, and it would be their copyright.
Sure, yeah.
So that's a big deal. So what I'm dealing with as a studio owner is people coming in with AI demo tracks, and they're saying, I want to make this live, you know. So we bring in the players and do that. But tell me about your world and how AI is affecting it.
Well, and here's the thing, and once again, coming from a purist standpoint, I mean, I've been very blessed and lucky in my career to work with live orchestras, you know, to get up in front of an orchestra with your charts and conduct and hear what you've created from other musicians collectively. That's the most amazing feeling in the world. However, the reality is the budgets that you work with, unless you're an A-lister, which I am not, you know, I've done a lot of film, but none of them have been A-list films. So therefore, that equates to you usually don't have a budget for a full orchestra. Now, you can augment VSTs, a string library. My go-to string library is Performance Samples. They're Pacific strings, which are just outstanding. They actually
Is
have
that
a
a
new...
plug?
It's a plug-in.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
You open up...
John, you need to put that up on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and if we can we give them a plug, like a?
That's what you were saying. Is this a
Oh,
plug?
I thought you said plug-in. I swear, I thought you said a plug-in. Let's
See how virtual he is.
yeah. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I'm a
I'm
musician.
talking real plugs, like maybe probably getting a sponsorship or something.
Exactly.
You're going,
Exactly.
It's a plug it now.
Sorry, you have to speak slowly. They're coming up with. Jasper Blunt is the creator of that. He's coming up with a new library called Vista 2, and I'm basically a snob especially when it comes to strings. But when I listen to his demos on this, it's amazing. It's the real thing. But that being said, if you don't have a huge budget, you can't afford to bring in a 47 or a 71 piece orchestra to record your stuff. So that's where this world comes into keeping orchestral music alive. If it weren't for the sample libraries that are out there, we'd be back in the 70s where everything is synth based. Yeah. Are you taking work away from anyone? Not really, because that work wouldn't be gotten anyway.
You couldn't afford to do that work
it
anyway.
can't. It can't be had. So that's where the VST and the virtual world comes into play. Now, as far as AI, you do have programs out there like Suno. Is it Sono or Suno? Suno. That you can just put prompts in, and within 3 minutes you have a song.
Yeah.
And you're ready to go. I mean, you could probably produce a full album in, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. And there's a part of me that says that's great for the average consumer to be able to express himself and put in prompts, stuff like. But for the purist musician and stuff like that, it's like, listen, I worked really hard my whole life to get as good as I can be, and now guys are producing stuff in 3 minutes that are just crazy.
Well, that brings up the whole thing about like remixes and beats and all those things that have happened over the past 20 years that you sit there and you go, oh, now the computer's considered an instrument in some schools, in music schools.
Yeah.
Well, it's your instrument. And I don't, the point that we're coming across here, we're older guys that have kind of walked through this whole process, but we did start when none of this was here.
Right.
Right? So I think what we value is the human element, the spiritual element that is a huge part of music.
Yeah.
But we don't deny the fact that technology is going to just run, and you either jump on board or you get off the train because it's going to run away from you no matter what. So we're trying to figure out how to best share with people at least our world and how we integrate these things.
Listen, I got a lot of blowback back in the 80s and the early 90s when I started introducing, I worked for Paramount Parks at the time, when I started introducing this world of MIDI into the stage shows and the attractions and the queue lines at the parks and stuff like that, because the blowback I got was from other studio musicians. You're taking work away from me. And basically I said, listen, like you said, you can either stand at the depot or you can get on the train, because that train has left. The genie's out of the bottle. And I'm glad I did, because I've been able to make a career out of this. And I think it's kind of the same way right now with AI. It's better to embrace it and to figure out how you can utilize it.
And maybe actually help kind of figure out where it sits, where it fits. Yeah.
Well, and like the Suno thing, it's a great jumping off point. So, for example, if you're a songwriter and you kind of get stuck and you need some ideas or stuff, I think Suno is a great, invaluable tool. To rely on it to just make a song and then say, hey, here's what I did, I think that's where I have a problem with it. Like I said, it's a great jumping off point. If you have, I mean, listen, even lyric-wise, sometimes, I'll get stuck when I'm writing lyrics, because I love writing lyrics, but I'll just do some prompts into Chat GPT and get some ideas, or I'll see a rhyme that I'll go, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now I'll change that around to make it fit what I do. So it's that whole thing of trying to figure out how you can utilize this technology and make it work for you.
I keep thinking that a lot of this is generational too, where a lot of the young people now in their teens, 20s, and maybe 30s, who have never really experienced the live side of things, never really even played with a band, never really knew what the dynamics were. So that is their world, and that's how they approach it. And the tools now are just, I mean, that's on the radio. I can do that.
Yeah.
Here it is, right? Yeah. I get that. I totally get that. I mean, a little story here, sidebar. I remember when I first got the Triton, and it had
Korg Triton.
Yeah, they had the sequences on there. And I remember I was working as a video editor, and I was scoring my own videos, or scoring the company's videos. And I remember putting away Texture and Digital Performer and just putting the Triton right there next to me, watching the video in Betacam, editing it, and then just hitting the button.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'd score it, and I'd make as much money doing that on a Korg Triton that I did sitting there setting up all my MIDI stuff and the sequencers and having the links chase the video. I mean, I'm doing this in real time because it's locked on a grid that I could literally just cut the grid together on the Betacam. So it was. I get it. I mean, and,
Well,
at that point in time, it took me a third of the time that it would take me. So, and I knew that if I did that, then really my earning potential was higher.
Right.
So-
And listen, I'm a commercial artist. You know, I work for a living
I'm
writing
sorry.
music. I know. I'm not the indie artist. You know, it's got to be about. No, listen, it's about time and money. If you, listen, I have a family to provide for. So in that regards, you have to go, okay, I could spend 3 days coming up with this score that I need to do that's going to be buried in the mix to begin with.
That's true.
Or I can hit the button on the Korg Triton, and it's exactly what I need that I would have written. So let's do this, and that way I can move on to the stuff that needs the attention. You've got to pick and choose your battles, especially when you're working in the commercial world.
Well, I think one of the things too that we have to realize that the customer's always right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's our philosophy. We know that, you know, when you're serving somebody, when you're writing for somebody, what they want, their vision is what you have to try to get and get into it as deep as you possibly can. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily know what they want.
Right.
So you have to give them various ideas and things like that, and only to end up with something that you probably never would have even wanted to do to begin with, but they're happy with it.
Well, back a few years, I don't do much commercial spots or anything like that anymore. But the one client that I had, I could write anything I wanted to, but she hated oboe. She just hated oboe. I couldn't use oboe. I'm like, okay. You know, I had another film that I was working on some very emotional, passionate scenes or whatever. Every once in a while, I like to use wind chimes. I just think it's, especially when you're using harp glisses, wind chimes with harp glisses are just beautiful.
It's your Disney thing, isn't it?
It is my Disney background with suspended cymbal swells and things. I mean, it's just a gorgeous feel. And I can remember the first cue I said, it was a very emotional thing, and the director texted back and said, "Love this cue. Just get rid of the wind chimes. I hate wind chimes." You're like, noted. No wind chimes.
No wind chimes.
No oboe. No, yeah. So, and we'll get into another thing and talking about dealing with clients and directors and stuff, but that's coming.
Yeah. I think the whole AI, you and I actually argue about it in a lot of ways, because my feeling is AI is great for certain things. It's got its space, but you're never going to put that spiritual element in there. You're never going to put in that emotion, or everything's on a grid. So if you want the intro to flow, you know, I had a friend just send me an AI tune the other day just to get my opinion on it. And I basically said, if there's a way to take the intro off the grid, it may match. He had the vocals really right on. I mean, the vocals actually sounded real, you know, in a sense of like I could feel it. But what gave it away was the way the intro came in. It was almost like a throwaway. Like, this is what we have to put in.
Right.
And the thing is, it'd be very difficult to take things off the grid and have that singer come in, especially when it stems, and come in off the grid and then get back on the grid. That's an editing skill in itself.
Yeah.
And then by that time, you've kind of lost the feel because you're so busy editing it to try to make it feel like something.
Right.
And I think that's where I get, like, just do it live, you know? Now, where I do love AI is, or not AI, let's say the virtual strings, okay, like your compositions.
Yeah.
Because these samples come from the top libraries, or they come from the best orchestras or the best players, they're going to be in tune.
Yeah.
And the mix is going to be phenomenal. So for me to try to get a medium, I don't want to say medium, but like a not the London Symphony or not the New York Philharmonic players, and what you have access to are, you know, let's say mid-level city type volunteer orchestras.
That's it.
To get those sounds takes so much time.
Yeah.
And then you never know if you're going to actually have to melodyne
Right.
the string sections.
Right.
And so a lot of times that purist in me just kind of, when it comes to strings and orchestral, I just give Rob a call and say, dude, can you just give me this cue? Because otherwise I'm going to be spending a lot of money hiring players that don't play anywhere as well
Yeah.
as the session players,
Yeah.
At Ocean Way in
Well,
Nashville or whatever. So
And they've gotten so good. And like I said earlier, I mean, I'm a self-admitted snob when it comes to live orchestral sounds compared to virtual VST stuff. And the libraries that are being developed now are just so incredible that it's hard for me to tell. I mean, I listened to Jasper Blunt's Vista 2 that's coming out. I listened to those demos and I'm like, I can't tell. I can't tell. And I would love to go, yeah, it's like 99.9%. No, I can't tell.
well, see, that's saying a lot, because even when you were playing me stuff 10 years ago, right, I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, you couldn't expose them like you could expose them now, because
Exactly.
you would hear nuances
Yep.
that weren't there 10 years ago.
Yep.
But it brings around the whole point that just because you've got a great string library, it means that you're going to have great sounding strings. It takes talent.
Yeah.
It takes a gifting of understanding
Yep.
how orchestrations work. What do players actually really play, as
Right.
opposed to guessing what they're playing?
Right.
And
I always equate it to like if you went out and bought a $4 million Stradivarius and you gave it to me to play, it would sound like a $23 Kmart toy violin.
Yeah.
Now, if you gave that $4 million violin to a violinist that's a virtuoso, it's going to sound like a $4 million Stradivarius.
Yeah.
So it all depends. Listen, your computer in the virtual world, your computer is your instrument. And you have to learn how to play that instrument just like you would any other instrument. Because, I get guys and gals that will send me demos to listen to. Can you give me your opinion? And you can tell the ones that actually get it, that understand, how to manipulate dynamics and different articulations and how to add different articulations to other instruments, because sometimes you have to stack articulations on top of each other, but that's just knowing your VST, your virtual instrument. And you just can't buy a virtual instrument, download it, and start playing it, and it goes, it sounds perfect. It doesn't work that way. You have to learn how to use it, and it's the same way with the computer. So one example I want to give as far as incorporating the virtual world into the real world is a lot of times I'm a guitarist and a keyboard player, but when I'm recording acoustic guitar, I will record the acoustic guitar first, and then if I want to enhance a little bit, I'll take a VST and Ample Sound is my go-to choice for guitars. They also have a Taylor that's almost the same as my real Taylor, and I will double that or do some counterpoint lines with the virtual Taylor on top of my real Taylor, and so that's where you can bring those two worlds together, and it really it adds so much life.
now, why would you do that and not just double it on the Taylor, on the original recording?
Because it does have a different quality to it, a different sonic quality to it, and then I can manipulate and just experiment with that virtual guitar, as far as, like I said, doing any kind of counterpoint lines or things like that. And
So you'd lay the foundation, like rhythm track or the picking pattern,
or whatever.
and that would be like your established pattern.
That's it exactly.
And then based on, you have more freedom playing it in on a keyboard
Mm-hmm.
or samples to create the icing on the cake on that guitar track. Or
yeah.
what do you mean?
Here, listen.
Because I'm used to working guitar players. So
Right.
you just say they're laying one track down, then
Right.
come back and lay another track on top
From a
of it.
virtual standpoint, as far as being a composer, it's all about textures, and I'm constantly, searching the web for new VSTs, whether not just orchestral stuff, but stuff that is different. You want your tracks to have a flavor to them that when somebody listens to it, they go, oh, I know what that is. That was that VST that does this. No, you're looking for things that you can customize and things like that. Same thing with that guitar sound for me. Now, somebody else probably doesn't do that, but I get a special kind of sound when I'm doing guitar tracks, when I'm playing it live, and then using a virtual guitar on top of it to either duplicate it or use, like I said, to do counterpoint and solo lines.
Well, could it also be that it's just easier? Once you lay your guitar track down, it's like
There's a part of that,
you
but
know, in other words, it's easier to make it better as opposed to trying to play those parts in.
yeah.
You can experiment how those parts
That's
fit
it.
in. Is that what it is?
That's
Okay.
the key word, is experimentation.
Okay.
And listen, when you're writing music, I whenever I do any master classes or anything, I always tell the students, listen, composing is the same thing as molding clay. You know, you throw a slab down there and you've got your wheels spinning and you're doing this thing and you get it to a certain point and you go, well, that stinks, and you smash it and you start all over again. It's the same thing with music. The whole goal is to just experiment and come up with a sound and a texture and a feel that all of a sudden, and you know when you hit it. You know, you hit that bullseye and you go, that virtual guitar line with my real acoustic, that is so cool. And that's what you're after. And, you know, when you're recording, yeah, if you played around long enough, but to be able to have the virtual instrument that you can go in and manipulate different lines and different notes, that's where the fun begins as far as being a composer.
And not to mention, you can edit the notes to
Yeah.
where if something's not exactly how much you attack it,
Oh,
or
yeah.
you can increase that, or you can sustain it, or you can do whatever you need to do to it.
You're molding clay.
I would think that when you do something like that, you really kind of make it your own, because most people, you know, unless you're working with top session acoustic players where they do 4 or 5 sessions a day, they're going to have their ideas, and the
Right.
producer is going to ask, show me a couple of those ideas
Right.
based on this. And they're experimenting. They're the ones, but they're experimenting on a knowledge base that
Right.
is experience that goes back a long time. I think this is a great example of when you don't have access to those players, you can make it sound similar, or it has its own vibe.
Right. Well, and
but-
two, learn from those players. Learn from those session players. Listen to what they're doing, and that way you can kind of incorporate into your own thing instead of not having a knowledge base. I mean, I always call it your bag of arsenal. You know, you got to have a bag of tricks, a bag of arsenal that you can pull from. From an orchestration standpoint, they're called vehicles. You learn vehicles that you can incorporate into different pieces of music. I may have used a vehicle, whether, you know, from woodwinds or whatever, from a film cue 3 films back, that I remember, you know, I like the way that transition worked because I used, you know, a combination of oboe, flute, and clarinet all at the same time. It had this nice texture. I'm going to use that. So it's the same thing with, you know, like with guitars, listening to session players, learning how they did those things. You know, I'm not the world's greatest guitar player, but I understand the physics of and the techniques of what they use. So when I hear something, I go, I'm going to commit that to memory. I'm going to put that in my arsenal and remember that vehicle that they used in that transition.
Yeah, the whole thing is really, so much of this is just so subjective, you know, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is attitude on how you look at things. And the biggest thing that can happen with most people, and I think where they fail, honestly, is that their pride kicks in. And like, yeah, you have to be proud about how good you are, what you can do. But when you get to the point where you're doing more criticism than you are actually learning,
Yeah.
then you lose.
Yeah.
You lose. You have to be willing to be a learner. I mean, in this industry, to grow, to make money at it, you have to know and learn
Yep.
how to do things.
There are no
you know?
rules.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just creating a whole competitive field, which is, there's enough competition.
Yeah.
You know, and I know my philosophy, and as I've gotten older, and it's a beautiful thing, is that you get to the point where you just don't care.
Yeah.
You just want to do what's right. You
Yeah,
know, you don't care. You're willing to work with a lot of different people, and you learn to recognize people who have something you don't have, and you can learn from.
Yeah.
And the collaboration is now like what I go for. It's a collaborating to where this particular bass player gives it a feel. I'm a bass player, right? But I hear this bass player and I go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
there's something in his DNA that that makes him sit in the pocket just at the perfect place at the perfect time. And he flexes with it.
Right.
Where I played off a grid my whole life, I was a jazz player for a long time, then I went commercial, where it's a tension for me to do that. But it flows naturally
Right.
for this particular player.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with pianists. Not everybody's the same. Everybody's got different giftings, and you've got to recognize what those giftings are.
Yeah.
And as a producer now, my goal is to help people become the best they can possibly be, right? With the right tools and
Right.
do things that way. So anyway, hey, thanks for showing up on this segment. There's more to come because
Yeah.
we've been around a long time and we got lots to talk about. So
Yeah. There's
anyway.
45 years of stuff.
Stuff. Yeah, that's true. All right. Have a good day.
Peace.